Every now and then, a post just ignites a firestorm online. It taps into those really deep-seated fears we all have about money, family, and the government. Today, we're dissecting one of those exact cases, a viral warning about Australian tax policy and the super sharp rebuttal that came right after. We're going to look at the claims, the counterclaims, and what this whole clash tells us about the info we're all consuming every single day.
So, it all kicks off with a social media post that feels like it was just engineered for maximum impact. And you can feel the tone here, right? It's not just trying to be informative, it's a blaring alarm bell designed to get an immediate, emotional reaction about a supposed threat from the government.
And there it is. The language is incredibly direct, isn't it? By saying everything you own, it immediately makes the threat personal. It frames this whole thing not as some dry policy debate, but as a direct attack on your family's security and everything you've worked for.
So what's the core accusation? Well, the post is claiming a triple tax is going to be slapped on a family home when it's passed down. The argument goes something like this. You already paid for the home, you already pay taxes on it every year, and now they're supposedly adding a third, massive tax when it's inherited.
The word choice here is so deliberate and powerful. Using words like theft and exploitation, that's meant to move this out of the world of tax policy and squarely into the world of morality. It's being framed as a totally unjust act against families when they're at their most vulnerable.
But of course, a claim this big didn't go unanswered. A rebuttal popped up, and it wasn't just a simple disagreement. Oh no, it was a methodical, point-by-point takedown, aiming to completely dismantle the original post from the ground up.
And boom, the shift in tone is immediate. It's dismissive, it's kind of condescending, and it frames the original post not as a legitimate warning, but as the kind of uninformed panic you'd find in a, quote, Facebook meme.
Okay, so let's break down the first major point of conflict, the so-called death duty. This claim of a massive inheritance tax is the absolute cornerstone of the original post's entire argument. Everything rests on this.
This is the fundamental question, isn't it? The entire debate really hinges on the answer to this one. So, does this tax actually exist on a federal level in Australia today?
And this lays out the core disagreement perfectly. On one side, you've got the very emotionally charged claim of a massive tax sum. And on the other, the rebuttal's cold, hard fact, this kind of federal tax hasn't been around since 1979.
This timeline really makes the rebuttal's point crystal clear. Just look at that key date, 1979. That's when the federal inheritance tax, or death duty, was abolished. So according to this source, from that moment until today, it's simply been off the books.
But the argument doesn't just stop with the inheritance tax. The second claim gets right to the emotional heart of it all. The idea that this tax would actually force a grieving family to sell their home. And again, the two sides are in complete opposition. One paints a picture of a forced sale just to pay the government. But the other side, the rebuttal, argues that this is protected by exemptions to something called capital gains tax, which is just the tax on the profit you make when you sell an asset.
Okay, this is the crucial detail. The rebuttal's whole argument here rests on this main residence exemption for capital gains tax. In simple terms, it means that if you inherit the family home and then you sell it within 2 years, you generally don't have to pay tax on the profit. This existing rule, it argues, prevents that whole forced sale scenario from ever happening.
So if the facts are so wildly different, you have to ask, why? This isn't just a simple disagreement anymore. It's really a battle over intent. Are we looking at a sincere, if maybe mistaken, warning? Or is this a calculated scare tactic?
And here's how each side frames the other's motive. The original post presents itself as this urgent call to action against government overreach. The rebuttal, though, just dismisses it as a political scare tactic, what it specifically calls liberal lies designed to freak out pensioners.
What's really fascinating here is that both posts end with basically the same call to action, stand up. But they point their anger in completely opposite directions. One is aimed at government policy, the other is aimed at the misinformation itself.
And this is how the rebuttal just turns the original post's message completely on its head. It takes that same passionate call to stand up and redirects all that anger. The implication is pretty clear. The first fight isn't against the government. It's against the people spreading bad information.
This line just perfectly summarizes the rebuttal's core message. It's a plea for everyone to just pause, to use some critical thinking before grabbing the digital pitchforks. The argument is that a single moment of fact-checking can diffuse the very outrage the original post was built to create.
And this leaves us with a really crucial question.
When a post taps into our deepest fears about money and family, does our responsibility to fact-check actually become even greater? In this constant war for our attention, who's ultimately accountable for the truth? The person who creates the alarm or the person who helps spread it?